The story starts with a young girl left stranded after a bunch of goblins attack the carriage she's riding in. Just as the goblins are about to finish her off, a mysterious boy shows up out of nowhere to save her. Fast forward a few years, and our protagonist Lois is asked if he'd like to join a girl's party. Everyone around loses their minds when they hear that this girl actually wants to team up with him. Lois himself is shocked, but the girl points to his sign, clearly advertising for party members. This girl is not backing down. She insists on joining him and proudly declares she's a martial artist. Lois then awkwardly introduces himself as a sort of healer, but before things can go any further, an Adventurers Guild employee named Amherst rushes over, ready to stop this girl from making the biggest mistake of her life. Amherst then reveals that this guy has earned himself the nickname, the Incompetent Lowest. Sure, he's a healer, but the dude only knows the most basic spell called heal. He's just another labyrinth orphan, like many others who lost their parents and had to become adventurers to survive. But even after all these years, Lois can't even cast an area heal or anything higher than the beginner spell, so he's infamous for being a complete joke. But despite his reputation, Lois somehow managed to join a party called Lightning Sword, until they kicked him out recently for not knowing detoxification magic. Word has spread, and now nobody wants him in their parties because, well, he's totally useless. Amherst, still trying to protect the girl, warns that if she parties up with Lois, she'll never make any money. But the girl Naru casually drops that she's already loaded. Amherst freaks out when she sees just how much cash Naru's lugging around, quickly explaining that most of the adventurers in this town are basically gangsters. The crowd of tough-looking folks around them proves her point, and she warns Naru to never flash that kind of money. Naru politely thanks her, and Amherst immediately realizes this girl is a total newbie to adventuring. So in true hustler fashion, Amherst offers to introduce her to a beginner's party, of course, for a fee. But Naru shocks everyone when she flat out refuses because she's been dying to join Lois's party for a really long time. Lois and Naru then head out to sign some papers to make their party official, but Naru's practically burning holes in Lois's skull with her stare. For some reason, she's got this weird admiration for him, and meeting him again feels like a relief. Then the little oddball gets totally thrown off when Lois tells her to sign her name, but she quickly pulls herself together. Lois covers the guild fee, and just like that, their party is now officially. Once outside, Lois starts rambling about how no one's ever reached the deepest part of the Mardat labyrinth. It's still shrouded in mystery, and no one even has a clue who or what the final boss is. Adventurers flock to Mardat City, hoping to strike gold, turning it into one of the biggest cities in the nation. Lois, being the psycho he is, wants to dive straight into the labyrinth right this second. Meanwhile, Naru's wondering if that's even remotely a good idea, considering their party is barely a few hours old. And also, before they left, Amherst gave Lois a heads up. Naru's a newbie, so he should only take her to the grasslands for now. The labyrinth leaks magic power, spawning monsters in certain areas, and the grasslands are one of those spots. Thankfully, only weak monsters show up there. It's supposed to be the perfect training ground for rookies, but it's also annoyingly huge, making it hard to find anything to fight. The labyrinth, on the other hand, is jam-packed with creatures, and that's exactly what Lois's itching for. He reassures Naru they'll be fine as long as they don't wander too deep, and if things go south, he's got it under control. His confidence is pretty wild for a healer, but he brushes it off like it's no big deal, and they press on. When they arrive, Naru insists on taking the lead. After all, she's a martial artist, so it makes sense for Lois to back her up as the healer. Lois is all for her confidence, but he can't help but wonder if she can actually fight. Naru quickly shuts down any doubts as she demolishes a group of goblins, and Lois is genuinely impressed. He explains that adventurers make their living by selling the magic stones monsters drop, and the guild buys them because they're valuable for all sorts of things. But he adds that she should already know this even as a beginner. Sadly, goblin magic stones aren't worth much, so if they want to make real money, they'll need to take down stronger monsters. They both agree to go deeper into the dungeon for better loot, and Naru even vows to protect the fragile healer if anything goes wrong. Not long after, it's actually Lois saving her when he stops her from stepping on a trap. He shows her where she almost met her maker and explains that he spotted the trap thanks to the different colored tiles. Usually spotting traps is a thief's job, so Naru's baffled and asks how Lois did it as a healer. Lois casually replies that he's been an adventurer for a long time, so he's picked up a few tricks along the way. As they venture deeper, they come across a half-orc, which shouldn't be on this level of the dungeon. Half-orcs are mid-level demons, and their tough hulking bodies make them a real challenge to defeat. Their strength is on par with monsters from the lower levels, so seeing one up here is definitely not normal. Naru's instincts tell her to turn tail and run, but Lowest is convinced they can take it down if they work together. He doesn't want to push her into it, but to his surprise, she agrees because she trusts his judgment. Naru then kicks off the fight, but she's shocked when her first attack feels like she's kicking a brick wall. The beast may be slow, but Naru still takes a hit, and things quickly go downhill. She finds herself cornered, the fight turning against her. But strangely, the half-orc doesn't finish her off. Just then, Naru's eyes widen in disbelief as Lowest comes out of nowhere, driving his sword right into the orc's chest, saving her at the last second. Lowest is relieved that Naru's okay, but she can't help but wonder if this guy is really just a healer. Lowest as usual brushes it off, explaining that his years as an adventurer taught him a few close combat tricks. Naru, still skeptical, points out that his attack didn't exactly look like a simple trick, but Lowest distracts her by noting that she's injured. Naru tries to shrug it off, claiming it's no big deal. But Lowest's healer instincts kick in. He knows even the smallest wounds need proper attention. Naru insists she's fine, but Lowest heals her anyway, not taking no for an answer. The magic stone left behind by the orc is much larger than the goblin's stones and packed with way more magic power, meaning it'll fetch a nice price. Lowest, satisfied with what he's seen from Naru's fighting skills, suggests they've earned enough money and can call it a day. But ever the fighter, Naru insists she can still go on, so the two continue ready for more hunting. Later, Amherst is floored when she sees how many monsters Lowest and Naru took down in just one day, so she quickly realizes Lowest must have dragged the newbie into the labyrinth. And to make matters worse, the fact that they brought back an orc stone means he took her to the middle level. But Lowest corrects her, saying they only went to the upper level. The orcs shouldn't have been there, but this lines up with what other adventurers have been saying. The higher-ups have been scrambling lately, so Amherst starts thinking something big might be happening in the labyrinth. Her mood quickly shifts though, as she's more than happy to pay them for their haul. Naru's weirded out by how excited Amherst is, so Lowest explains that guild employees get a pay raise when they buy magic stones, but only from the adventurers they're in charge of. The more Lowest and Naru earn, the more Amherst gets paid. Lowest, still shocked by the size of the payout, has to be reminded by Amherst to split it with Naru. Lowest would never forget, but he's stunned because even after splitting it, it's still 10 times more than he's ever made before. That realization hits him hard, and Lowest sinks into a deep depression. Amherst steps in to explain to Naru that Lowest had been completely swindled, while in the Lightning Sword party they never gave him his fair share of the rewards. Naru's absolutely furious when she hears this, and she demands that the guild do something about it. But the decision is up to Lowest, and he chooses to let it go. He's happy with his new party and just wants to forget the past. As they leave, a mysterious man watches them from the shadows. Later, the greedy Amherst is counting her hard-earned cash, but she's startled when the man appears. It's Handsome, her boss, and he's worried she might have helped Lowest find a new party. Amherst brushes it off, saying she doesn't have some magical power of persuasion strong enough to convince someone to join Lowest's party. Instead, she explains, there was just this girl who saw something special in him. Handsome seems to know who this blue-haired girl is, but for some reason, it clearly troubles him. That night, Lowest is shocked to find out that word of him getting a new party member has already spread like wildfire across the city. Apparently, the notoriously incompetent Lowest picking up some poor fool to join his party is big news. Lowest then moves to reserve a room, and Naru gets flustered at the idea of sharing one with him. Lowest quickly decides they should sleep in separate rooms, but this seems to leave Naru a little disappointed. They go to their rooms for the night, and Naru's thoughts drift back to when she was healed. Turns out Naru was the girl from the carriage, and Lowest was the guy who rescued her. After he healed her, she was so grateful, but Lowest, in typical fashion, apologized for not being able to do more. Despite all that, Naru stayed weirdly optimistic. Even though the goblins probably massacred everyone else in the carriage, she didn't seem to care and just swore she'd become an adventurer. From that day on, Naru was dead set on joining Lowest's party, promising to protect him. Since then, Naru's been training like crazy, waiting for the chance to be by Lowest's side. Then the moment she heard that Lowest got booted from his party, she rushed straight to the city. The little stalkers thrilled her plan worked perfectly. Not only did she form a party with Lowest, but they even took down an orc together. She's doing everything for him, so it crushes her when she realizes he didn't even recognize who she was. It makes sense though her appearance has changed so much since then. But that's not the only thing that's different. Lowest is way stronger than she remembers, and it doesn't seem like he even needs her protection anymore. Snapping herself out of it, Naru reminds herself of her promise to protect Lowest no matter what. She then re-energized to get ready for bed, but one thing still bugs her. How in the world do people call Lowest incompetent when he's actually insanely powerful? The story then flashes back to Lowest fighting a Hydra alongside his old party. It's clear they're struggling badly. The party's thief is injured, and Lowest uses his healing spell on her. She asks him if it can cure poisons, and he explains that it can't, but if he boosts her physical strength, she'll be able to fight off the poison on her own. The thief isn't thrilled and complains about it, but before she can finish, their arrogant leader cuts in, demanding they stop whining and get back into the fight once she's healed. The thief is fed up and snaps at the moron of a leader, telling him she's in no shape to fight. So the leader turns to Lowest and orders him to take care of her. Lowest is already frustrated and reminds the leader that he told him to bring antidotes for this exact situation. Of course, the leader had been too cheap to buy them, complaining they were too expensive. Now, in typical fashion, he blames Lowest for not being able to do more, even accusing him of being a useless healer who can only cast basic healing spell. The leader then desperately yells at their terrified magician Armia to cast a spell, so she shakingly manages to fire off a fireball, but it doesn't do shit against the Hydra. At this point, the leader is fed up, thinking his whole team is pathetic. Realizing they're completely outmatched, he chickens out and orders a retreat, running away like a coward. Armia follows him, and Lowest is left to help Saberia escape by supporting her on his shoulder. The next day, instead of reflecting on their own mistakes, the party blames Lowest for their failure and kicks him out. Lowest is completely taken aback by that shit. Then Saberia is also accusing him of being the reason they couldn't beat the Hydra. But Lowest calmly points out the real reason they stayed up partying until dawn. So neither the leader nor Saberia were at their best during the battle. The leader, now feeling attacked, asks if Lowest is blaming them. Lowest insists he's not, but they all turn to Armia for the final word. But the leader gives her intimidated looks, so she buckles under the pressure and throws Lowest under the bus by pointing the deadly finger at his sorry ass. We then learn that Lowest was dreaming about the past and wakes up shaken. He reflects that maybe this incident bothered him more than he realized. Considering it's still haunting his dreams, he grabs some water, thinking back to a similar situation from years ago. It was 6 years ago, and even then, he had already earned a reputation as an ignoramus. But despite that, he still held onto the dream of becoming a first-rate adventurer. That's when a party reached out to him offering him a spot, and Lowest, eager for the chance, jumped right in. But they didn't bring him on as a healer, they used him as bait. They tossed him in front of monsters, expecting him to draw their attention while they stood back. Lowest dodged their attacks, running for his life, and though he was used to being treated like this because after all, he was a labyrinth orphan, but it still got under his skin. Eventually, the monsters grew bored of him and turned on the rest of his party, killing all of them. Lowest somehow managed to escape, but the sting of never being treated as a real adventurer stuck with him. It was then, while wandering, that he came across a group of goblins attacking a carriage, and beside it, a girl was hiding from the monsters. Even now, Lowest isn't sure why he decided to help her. He fought the goblins, thinking maybe, just maybe, his worthless life could be traded to save hers, and that would at least give his death some meaning. But he wasn't strong enough, and the monsters knocked him out cold. When he regained consciousness, he saw the girl standing over him. Relieved that he was awake, she explained that the Order of the Knights had arrived in time to save her, and Lowest, feeling utterly useless, thought to himself that he truly was an idiot because he couldn't even save one girl. But to his surprise, she thanked him, saying that if it weren't for his help, the knights wouldn't have arrived in time. She even told him that he looked cool while fighting, though Lowest found it hard to believe. Noticing she was hurt, his instincts kicked in, and he quickly used his healing spell on her. She thanked him again, and he replied that healing was all he could do. He then opened up to her about how his own party had used him as nothing more than bait. The girl was heartbroken when she heard how Lowest had been treated like living bait, and she started crying for him. Then her tears quickly turned into determination, and she vowed that when she grew up, she would become an adventurer and join his party, and promised to protect him. Lowest was touched by her words, but as she left with the knights, he knew deep down that she was probably from a noble family and that the chances of her becoming an adventurer, let alone joining his party, were slim. But her words gave him the courage he desperately needed, and with renewed hope, he decided to give adventuring another shot. Motivated by her promise, Lowest sought out mentors who trained him in swordplay and magic. Though he was still primarily a healer and could only use his heal spell, he worked hard to master other skills, pushing himself beyond what he thought was possible. After completing his training, he finally found a new party to join the Blades of Lightning. Looking back, it made sense why that dream resurfaced. He realized that if it weren't for that girl's words, he wouldn't be where he was now, and had he given up back then, he'd never have had the chance to see her again. Just as Lowest reflects on this, Naru knocks on his door, asking if he wants to grab breakfast. Lowest agrees, and they head out together. The scene then shifts to them in the labyrinth, where Lowest announces they'll be heading to the lower levels today. Later, they find themselves standing in front of a teleportation circle. Naru excitedly mentions that she's never seen one before, so Lowest explains that these circles aren't found in every labyrinth. This one was placed by a magician shortly after the labyrinth was discovered, but even he doesn't know much more about it. Naru, then thinking of the possibilities, says it would be great if they could use it to teleport anywhere, but Lowest clarifies that they can only use this circle to teleport to another circle. Naru then muses that it would have been a lot easier if the city had a teleportation circle, so she guesses they didn't install one in the city for fear that monsters might swarm in. Lowest corrects her, explaining that monsters can't use these circles, but the real problem is that the knowledge to create new ones was lost centuries ago, so there's no way to make them anymore. They then activate the circle and teleport to the middle levels, and when they arrive, Lowest warns Naru that the monsters here are stronger than those they fought before, urging her to stay alert and be careful. The scene shifts to Lowest and Naru in the thick of battle against a group of monsters. Lowest quickly dispatches his share, but when Naru lands a punch on one of the creatures, her fist goes right through its body like it's made of air. She confusedly looks to Lowest, who tells her it's a monster made of pure spirit energy. It has no physical form, so normal attacks won't work on it. Naru, realizing he's right as she can see through the lick's body, listens as Lowest advises they retreat since neither of them can use magic, putting them at a serious disadvantage. But Naru confidently mentions she can handle it, and Lowest immediately understands what she's hinting at. We then see Lowest skillfully drawing the lick's attention, giving Naru time to prepare her attack. As Lowest runs, he explains that with enough training, people can control their prana, and it's an inner spirit energy, and they use it to fight spiritual beings like the lick. Then we see Naru infuse her fist with prana, and with one devastating punch, she obliterates the lick. She celebrates her victory, but Lowest quickly notices that she's injured. Realizing she must have gotten hurt when she landed her attack, he pulls out a magic item and uses it to cast a healing spell on her. He explains that this particular item enhances healing spells thanks to the magic stone embedded inside. Lowest goes on to tell her that the guild collects magic stones from adventurers, hands them over to craftsmen, who then forge them into magic items and return them to the adventurers. After Naru is fully healed, she asks Lowest how much the magic stone they found is worth, and Lowest estimates that it could fetch a good price. They then sell the stone to Amherst, who pays them generously for it. On their way back to the inn, Lowest is pleasantly surprised by how much they earned from the sale. As they stroll through the streets, they notice a commotion, so they curiously move in closer to get a better look, and they see two adventurers in the middle of a heated argument, looking like they're about to throw hands. Lowest then tells Naru that fights like this have become pretty common around here lately, and he explains that adventurers who've caused trouble elsewhere have been flocking to this town recently. Naru recalls that Amherst mentioned something similar, and as they look around, they see rough-looking adventurers everywhere. Lowest sighs, thinking it's become a real pain in the neck for the more respectable adventurers, but he quickly shifts the conversation, suggesting they treat themselves to something fancy since they've just been paid. The scene cuts to them at the inn, enjoying a lavish meal. The innkeeper looks a bit nervous, wondering if Lowest can actually cover the cost of all this. But Lowest grins, reassuring her not to worry as he orders some ale. Naru, not wanting to be left out, asks for ale too, but she's immediately denied, told she's too young to drink, so she huffs, clearly not happy about being treated like a kid. Then once they finish eating, Naru asks Lowest about a strange tower she's noticed at the edge of town. She's seen similar structures popping up all over the city. Lowest admits it's odd and tells her that he once got curious and asked the builders about it. To his surprise, even they didn't know who commissioned the towers or why. Naru, wide-eyed, is shocked, and Lowest explains further. The builder was hired by an agent, who was representing another agent, and so on. It's a long chain of middlemen, and whoever's really behind it doesn't want to be found. Lowest shrugs it off, saying it doesn't really matter as long as no one's getting hurt. To him, it's just a sign that there are plenty of strange people in the world, and he jokingly adds that they'd be better off building a wall around the city instead of these mysterious towers. Naru, thinking it over, points out that the city doesn't even have a wall. She admits she likes how open it feels, but Lowest brings up a good point: it could be a real problem if war broke out. So he asks her how they'd stop invaders. But without hesitation, Naru replies that with so many adventurers around, there's no need to worry, they'll protect the city from anything that comes their way. Lowest agrees with her, and with that the two of them head off to their room for the night. But before Lowest enters his room, Naru tries to stop him, clearly wanting to say something, but the words just won't come out. Instead, she awkwardly wishes him a good night. Once in her room, she lies on her bed, thinking about how much she wishes she had the courage to ask to stay in Lowest's room, but she just can't bring herself to say it. Meanwhile, Lowest lies in his own bed, feeling grateful to be part of a party again. He's unsure if he'll ever see that little girl from his past, but thanks to Naru, he feels like he can keep adventuring for a while longer. The scene then cuts to the Blades of Lightning. Their leader, Margulis, introduces the party's new healer Lyra, but she doesn't get the warmest welcome from the other members, which makes her feel a little uneasy. Still, Margulis is confident that with this new team, they'll finally be able to defeat the Hydra. Next, the scene shifts to a dark and eerie place. Handsome is seen informing someone that the sleeping princess is currently in the city and has formed a party with Lowest, pretending to be just another adventurer. The old man he's speaking to is surprised to hear Lowest is still in town, so he remarks that they need to get rid of him, as time is running out, and Handsome agrees as they plot their next move. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.